Hey guys, welcome to Scrufs Garage. Today I'm working on my 2001 Corvette. As I've mentioned in the past, this is going to be my track car now. So I've been going through changing out several of the different fluids. What I'm working on today is the power steering fluid. Most likely it's never been changed in this car. Like I said, it's an 01, 63,000 miles. Never been changed, so before I start tracking the car hard, I figured it'd be a good thing to change. So I picked up some Royal Purple power steering fluid. Is a synthetic. I think that'll work out pretty well for me, but there are several other options. Redline, Amsoil, you can get the GM stuff. Quite a few options there, just whatever you want to spend. So that's my project for today. You could just suck out all the fluid from the reservoir, fill it up, drive the car a day, suck it out again, and slowly change it that way. But I want to go ahead and speed up the process, and also want to push the new fluid through the power steering rack. So I'm going to disconnect the line where the return line comes back into the reservoir. I'll put together just a quick little diagram. I don't know how well you can see this, but we're going to disconnect it here where the return line comes back to the reservoir. This would be the low pressure side. That we're not going to have the motor running when we do this. That power steering pump will suck the reservoir dry far faster than we could pour new fluid into it. So that's what we're going to tackle today. So bear with me and we'll get started. Alright guys, get ready to get started. So at this point I've got the front end of the car jacked up off the ground just a little bit, just enough to get the tires off the ground. A few minutes we're going to cycle the steering wheel side to side so that we can move the power steering fluid through the steering rack. And having the tires off the ground will make that a little bit easier since we won't have the motor running or have the assist of the power steering to move the tires side to side. So at this point I'm going to use an automotive syringe to suck the old fluid that's currently in the reservoir out. I'll try to get it out as much as I can, because then I want to take loose the return line that comes in here to the bottom of the reservoir. Certainly if I just take it off now, all that fluid's going to come pouring out and make a big mess. So hopefully I can reduce some of that by using one of these. I just got this off of Amazon, just a few bucks. It's plastic, probably won't last forever, but I've used it several times already, changing the clutch fluid as well. So very handy tool to have for less than 10 bucks. I definitely recommend picking one up. So let's get started. Let's see if I can manage to make as little of a mess as possible. And I'm just using an old Gatorade bottle. Put the old fluid in. So I think at this point I've got most of the fluid, at least what I can get to, out of the power steering reservoir. Not really sucking anything up there. You can see really there's not that much, probably maybe that deep in the bottle. There's not that much fluid in the reservoir, but certainly this will make it easier once we take that bottom line off. So take a quick break, I'll change things up, and I will move on with the next step. Alright, so at this point I'm ready to take off this return line, which has got a clamp on it, so I'll loosen that and slide it back. And I'll probably have to work some to get that hose off the reservoir. I've tried to get as much out of the fluid out of the reservoir as I can, but I suspect there's still a fair amount down here in the bottom that I can't get to with the syringe. So I've positioned some paper towels hopefully to catch and minimize the mess, but we'll see how this goes. There we go. Alright, so I've got the clamp off. Now let's see how much of a bear this is to get off. Alright, I fought with this 2 or 3 different tools trying to figure out what would work. But I think I finally got something that will. Yeah, here we go. I will say there's quite a bit of power steering fluid left in there. That's making one heck of a mess. Alright, so I made a giant mess and I've cleaned up a small portion of that giant mess. At this point I used a rubber cap to cap off the nipple where the return line comes into the reservoir, because I've got the line routed into that Gatorade bottle, kind of wedged up here in the front, and rounded the line down into the bottle, and then I capped off the reservoir with a rubber cap, just a plain rubber cap. So at this point I'm ready to fill up the reservoir. This is not that sensitive as to how much we put in, we just don't want to run it dry, and I'm going to run several run this through several times. Make sure that's not leaking. So I put in a whole bottle this first time. Alright, we'll give this a try. Got the camera aimed on the bottle. See if you can see the fluid as it makes it into the Okay, so just a quick follow-up. I ran pretty much most of the second bottle into the system, so this is the amount of fluid that I got out. This is probably 2/3 full, and this was after I emptied the bottle the amount that I sucked out initially from the reservoir, which probably would have filled it up completely. And this is a 20-ounce bottle. So I've moved 20 ounces out of this system. This would probably be sufficient. I do have a couple more bottles, so I may go back and cycle it a little bit more and run some more fluid through it, just because I have it. But this would probably be sufficient, I would think. Certainly the vast majority of the fluid's been changed at this point. So from there, it's just a matter of putting that line, the return line, back on the reservoir, making sure the fluid level is correct, and at that point you're pretty much finished. Alright, well that wraps things up. Not too bad of a job. We changed the power steering fluid on this 01 Corvette. Essentially what we did, we disconnected the return line where it comes back from the rack and empties back into the reservoir. We disconnected it there. We ran that into a little bottle. Then with the car turned off, we cycled the steering wheel side to side to move the new fluid from the reservoir through the pump, through the rack, and then once we started getting new fluid back into the overflow bottle, we knew we'd moved all the fluid through the system. I ended up using 3 bottles total. Probably would have been fine with just 2, but I had bought 3, so I figured I'd go ahead and use them. Then once all said and done, put the car back down on the ground, clean things up, started the car, and cycled the steering a couple of times just to make sure my final power steering fluid level was correct. But other than that, not too bad of a job. A little messy. The biggest trick is try not to siphon as much of the fluid out of the reservoir before you start, and then cap off that exit nipple on the reservoir as quickly as you can, so that you don't dump what's left in the reservoir down the front of the engine and onto the frame rail like I did, and you spend quite a bit of time trying to clean that up. But other than that, not too bad. But thanks for tuning in to Scrufs Garage. Stay tuned. I've got some race seats that I'll have to put in here soon, along with some harnesses and the harness bar. So I'll have all that ready to go for us soon. See you then.